Hello and welcome to Shauns Take, brought to you by the Keystone Sports Network. Here are your hosts, Jim and Shaun.
Hello and welcome to Shauns Take, brought to you by the Keystone Sports Network. I'm Jim Galante. He is Shaun Gold. Shaun, we got 1 week in the books. And it was not a good week, was it?
No, it was a fun week having college football officially back, but I would say it wasn't a good week, Jim.
I felt very good about the picks. You and I had the same picks, 4 out of 5 games. We differentiated on Clemson, LSU. I defer to you. You won that one. But I did want to mention one more thing about our picks from last week, Shaun, and what I was curious on your take on this. We talked about Penn State, Nevada, with that huge 45-point spread. And I think both of us were very leery. We always pick Penn State games because we know we have so much of a Penn State audience. But the real advice is stay away from that kind of spread. And this particular game, I think, was a great lesson for those who want to bet this kind of game. When we chatted last week prior to the game, it was like a 45-point spread. During the game, Penn State, before the game started, the spread went down to 42.5. That's when I bet it. Late in the game, Penn State has a 43-point lead. Literally, that couple point change was in my favor. I felt great. Penn State has the ball late. They have a 4th and 2 around midfield. The game's in hand. A lot of the backups, even James Franklin talked about it. This was a good opportunity for the backups on a 4th down play to get some experience. You know where this goes, though. They don't make it. Nevada, down 43 points, starts looking for the moral victory, and against a group of Penn State backups, they drove a short field, scored a touchdown. So I went from loser to winner to loser that quick in a 40-some point game, Shaun.
And it's tough because, one, we both know Penn State typically knows what the spread is, and they typically try to cover these big spreads too. So, you're sitting there looking at that 4th down conversion thinking if we get this, we cover. And Penn State may have even tried to score a touchdown after that too, knowing Penn State. So it's a heartbreaker for sure. And, there's a lot of metrics on these big spreads. Sometimes they go in the favor of the home team, but it's an impossible tell at the end of the day. Are you going to beat somebody by 40 plus points, or is it going to be 38? And that's the situation you find yourself in so many times with these types of spreads.
And yes, you're betting on the starting team and how much better they are. Unfortunately, it's often backups from the heavy favorite playing against a lot of starters from the opposing team. So let that be a lesson to everyone. Let my mistake be a lesson to you. By the way, we're going to have Penn State on our list here again with greater than a 40-point spread. But let's get started. Some interesting games this week. They're not the big games we saw in week 1, but still some interesting ones. I want to start with, Shaun, with Illinois at Duke. Illinois is a 3-point favorite in this one. That's the latest I saw, from 3.5 to 3 points as we're recording this. So Illinois, a lot of folks think, hey, that's the Indiana of this season, with a nice schedule set up for them, but an actual test out of conference against Duke.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people look at this spread and say, oh, you have a number 12 ranked team in the country against an unranked team, and the spread's only 2.5, 3 points. Why would you not just go and hammer Illinois here? I'm taking Illinois in this game, but not because of the rankings in this. I'm taking it because I'm looking at a Duke team that has a lot of talent that I think is good, and like you said, is a true test. However, I think this comes down to ACC versus Big Ten. I think this is a matchup where the Big Ten flexes their muscles and shows there is a significant gap between the Big Ten, and the ACC still. So I think this not only is a big game for Illinois, but a big game for the conference itself to just go and show, hey, do not disrespect us like this. We are better than these ACC teams. And I think that means something for all these Big Ten teams. You see Big Ten and SEC. I think they really do want to prove that we are just leaps and bounds better than everybody else. And I think there's a couple games this week where that can be shown. And I think this is going to be one of them. So I like Illinois -2.5, -3, whatever book people can get it on. And I think they, like you said, they have a legitimate pathway to the college football playoff to be that Indiana of last year. They play against Ohio State, and that's really could end up being their only loss this season if they do what they're supposed to do in all the other games. And I think this is one of those weeks where, they pick up a win they should get. I know it's on the road at Duke, which, isn't ideal, but I think they're a better team at the end of the day, Jim.
Here we go right off the bat. I'm going to go the other way, Shaun. I know I like a lot of things about Illinois, and I'm very quarterback conscious with these teams. Luke Altmaier, the veteran, he's back with Illinois. I think that really helps. But when you start to get too excited about a team, I think that's where the problems start.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of folks are really high on Illinois. And I saw this on their schedule, back in the summer, Shaun. I said, got to be careful with that one. On the road at Duke. And Duke, by the way, they went out and got themselves a pretty good quarterback from Tulane. Okay. Yeah. A veteran guy. This is at home. And all of the Keystone Sports Network listeners know I'm a huge Manny Diaz fan. Former Penn State defensive coordinator, now head man at Duke. I'm going with the Blue Devils in this one, Shaun. I think Illinois might just get their bubble burst this weekend. All right. Next game up, yes, it's FIU at Penn State. Where what I saw, my latest spread on it, Shaun, was 41.5 points. What do you think about the Nittany Lions this week with another big expectation margin of victory?
I as we mentioned and alluded to earlier, don't love the spread here, but Penn State failed to cover a big spread once. I don't think they do it in back-to-back home games. I think Penn State covers the spread. We talk about this every single year. James Franklin and the Nittany Lions, they know what the point spread is. And I think they know they've got some, maybe some big donors, putting some money down here, and they want to do right by them. So I think Penn State covers this. I think, they want to continue to show, we're going to dominate our opponents. And Penn State always does this. They beat the teams they're supposed to beat by a lot. And, I think they are kind of upset about how last week ended, regardless of what the spread was. I don't think they like the end of the game there. And I think they're disappointed about that. So I don't think they let that happen twice in a row, Jim.
I'm with you. I'd like to think the spread does not have anything to do with it. I think it's more James Franklin lets his backups continue to play. He wants to see what they can do. There's depth. The backup, Ethan Grunkmeyer, looked very good in that first go-round. Cam Wallace showed us something at running back. They have the weapons. And the other thing, and I think will be a point of emphasis this week for the Nittany Lions, is last week, I believe they had 4 field goals. 4 times they were down in the red zone or near red zone and settled for field goals. I think that will be a point of emphasis this week. I think that they'll be playing for touchdowns, not field goals. I think the other thing is Nevada did a lot to slow down that game. They were very deliberate on offense. They were playing not to give up the big chunk plays. They did everything in their power to not get blown out. I'm not sure we'll see the same thing this week from FIU. I'm going with the Nittany Lions also, but still with the word of warning. Be careful when your spread is over 40 points. All right, next up, Shaun, maybe the biggest game of the weekend, Michigan at Oklahoma. And the Sooners are a 5.5-point favorite. I'm curious, first of all, before you make your pick, does the spread surprise you at all?
It does. I think when you just take a look at the matchup, right off the bat, it does surprise me. I would have thought that this would be the 2.5 point spread like we're seeing in Illinois Duke. So I I was a little bit surprised by the number initially there. And when I kind of got to making my pick on this, I'm looking at Big Ten versus SEC. There's obviously a lot at stake for both teams here, for the conferences. Kind of, this is one of those matchups of who is better, which conference has the upper hand. I'm not positive that Oklahoma is the 18th best team in the country, and while Michigan still has to answer questions offensively for me as well, I believe that Michigan's defense and physicality can win this game for them. So I not only think that, they should cover plus 5.5, I think there's a realistic shot that Michigan can win this game and just overtake them physically. So for that reason, I like the plus 5.5 for Michigan here, Jim.
Interesting. I'm gonna go the other way on this one. Also, we're having a lot of those in this week. I look at both of these teams being very similar in
Mm-hmm.
that they've been down a little bit. For Michigan, just the 1 year. For Oklahoma, a couple years. They both have a lot to prove. Are they part of the upper echelon in their conference? That's the question. And in these games, I do a lot of looking at the quarterback situation. Now, Michigan has Bryce Underwood, the true freshman, very highly regarded, had a good first game, but against iffy competition. Oklahoma, they brought in John Mateer from Washington State. So he's an experienced guy. I like that. I also like that Oklahoma, this might be their last chance for this coaching staff
Mm-hmm.
to what's it, to get back where they think Oklahoma should be. If they
Mm-hmm.
don't do it this year, they may not have another opportunity. This is the time for them. I think the pressure's on them to win this game. I like Oklahoma at home. All right, next up, Iowa at Iowa State, intrastate battle there. Iowa State is a 3-point favorite in this one, Sean.
I think Iowa State is a really good team, and I think they're, in the grand scheme of things, a better team than Iowa. I would bet at the end of the year, they're ranked higher, they're in better standings. Part of that's because your conference, and I think Iowa State will play for a Big 12 championship, and I don't think Iowa will be in the Big 10 championship game. However, if you've noticed one thing, and for all the listeners out there, I seem to value the conference a decent amount in today's episode. So while I think that Iowa State, might be a better team, this is a rivalry game. And I think Iowa is going to try to turn this into a Big 10 game instead of Iowa State being able to turn it into a Big 12 game, if that makes sense. So I don't value the Kansas State win that heavily for Iowa State, because I thought Kansas State was overrated coming into this season. And if week 2 showed us anything, or I guess week 1, they played week 0 first. If week 1 showed us anything about Kansas State, it's that they might not be as good as everyone thought they were going to be heading into this season. So I don't think that's a huge win for Iowa State. And I think Iowa has a shot at pulling off one of these rivalry upsets here. I know they're the underdog, but I think same thing with my analysis on Michigan. I think they can just out physical them, control the line of scrimmage, control a run game, play defense, and end up covering this spread. So give me Iowa and another Big 10 team for me.
You know what? This is turning into a fun week, Sean. I've got Iowa State, and let me tell you why. It's interesting that you've been very much focused on the conference, as you pointed out. This is a Big Ten team versus the ACC or versus the Big 12. And you think their physicality, the physical nature, the good defenses will win the day. Me, I'm more looking at quarterbacks, okay, as the tell in some of these games, right or wrong. So Iowa, they brought in Mark Gronowski from South Dakota State, okay. They've got their quarterback situation fixed, Sean. Did you see Gronowski's numbers the first week? Let me
Not
sh-
sure. I
let me share.
don't
Let
know
me
if I
share.
want to.
8 for 15 for 44 yards. Now, you might say, well, he only threw 15 passes, very small sample size. But to me, that's part of the situation. I don't want to say the coaching staff didn't trust him to throw more, but they said, this is what we're comfortable with. You only throwing 15 balls for a total of 44 yards. Meanwhile, again, the veteran quarterback for Iowa State, Rocco Beck, again, a guy who's been there, who's been at the controls for a couple years. I trust him more in a rivalry game. The game's at Iowa State. You know what? I'm going to give up those 3 points, and I'm going to take Iowa State in this one, Shaun. So we've been, that's 3 out of 4 now. We're differing on. We've got one more game, and I think this game, Shaun, is a little bit of testament to week 2. Not a lot of great matchups, but there are at least 2 names. It's Oklahoma State at Oregon, and I'll ask the same question. I have the spread down at 28.5 points, a little more than 4 touchdowns. Does that surprise you at all? I know Oklahoma State was down last year, but it's still Oklahoma State. How do you see this one going?
So when I first started looking at this game, I was going to say Oklahoma State. But Jim, Oklahoma State gave Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks some bulletin board material this week. I'm not sure if you saw this, but there was a comment made about how much more Oregon spends on their team. And Dan Lanning's response was, we spend to win. So I at first thought that Oklahoma State would be able to cover because they'll just be able to kind of match the pace a little bit and, lose by 25 points instead of 28, 29 points. But I think this fuels the fire for Oklahoma, for Oregon. And I think Dan Lanning and Oregon are going to have that all over the locker room saying how much more they spend. And I think they are going to go punch them in the mouth and say, that's why we spend the money. Bye-bye. Have a good day. So I'm with Oregon on this one. I think this is going to be a blowout win.
Boy, I'll tell you what. After this week, one of us is going to be really happy and the other one really upset. I took Oklahoma State in this one. I just felt it's a big number. I think, especially with these Big 12 teams, it's easy to overreact each year. I do like Mike Gundy coaching Oklahoma State. I think that they're a better team than what we saw from a year ago, a better program than what we saw. I just feel like they can keep it close, keep it competitive. As you said, maybe they lose by 20 or 25 points. Maybe it's never in doubt. But this 28.5 points, Shaun, boy, that's just a little too much for me. So I'm taking the Cowboys of Oklahoma State in this one. Shaun, we've got a good week going here with us disagreeing on 4 out of 5 games.
100%. This, this really doesn't happen that often. Like I remember going back last year, the year before, a lot of times we'd at least agree on 3 of them. So this is a rare week here, and it's going to be an interesting weekend.
As I said, somebody is going to be happy next week, and someone's going to be very unhappy. All right, Shaun, that is it for this week's edition of Shauns Take. Make sure you come back and join us again next week.
Keystone Sports Network.